Okay, so we're now looking at our 10-minute devised pieces. For this, we looked at and decided to choose the play Heart's Desire by Caryl Churchill. Churchill, a bit of background on Churchill and some of the research that I've done. She uses non-naturalistic techniques in her exploration through sexual politics and feminist ideas. She is a political playwright, very similar to Brecht in style. A lot of what she's done has drawn from Brecht's style, and she's developed from it. So in that, she obviously used the idea of epic theatre, alienating the audience, to give off these main themes and ideas and messages that the audience would obviously take from the pieces that she's done. In a lot of what she does, she abandoned realism, so a lot of what she did was about making sure that the audience still know that this was a play. There was some realism to it, it wasn't totally abstract, like for example Artaud or DV8 or Frantic Assembly, but it was quite abstract in the sense that it wasn't like supposed to be natural like Stanislavski. So in terms of that, when comparing it to something that we are going to do and our other 10-minute devised piece, we might look at some of the ones that I've just mentioned, like DV8 or Frantic Assembly, to show a contrast in styles that we can then talk about. However, she did, in some of her later plays, take inspiration from Artaud slightly in developing more of her pieces to have add dance aspects and more of a performance type style, but still not losing the effect of the main message, political messages that she wants to get across. But because we're choosing one of her middle pieces, Heart's Desire, which was she wrote in 1997, so it was not the beginning of her career but in the middle, we're more focused on the Brecht style of it, the Brecht influence, and how Churchill wrote it to sort of make it feel more like Brecht's style, but a modern version of that. So more on Heart's Desire, it was written as a two-piece with another play called Blue Kettle, and it came together to create like a whole piece called Blue Heart. The interesting thing about Heart's Desire is that it immediately breaks the illusion of a performance, and it immediately breaks the perception and alienates the audience, because the thing that makes it unique is that the scene resets. It is the same scene throughout the whole play, but it resets constantly throughout at random intervals. The only thing that sets it apart in each scene is the slight variations. When Churchill talked about why she did the variations, she talked about how it was the character motivations that drew certain variations. It was character compromise that drew others. So, for example, in one variation, one character might have instigated an argument, and it ended up in this massive argument, and then the scene resets, and the same scene plays out again, but a different scenario where they compromise. So it's almost like trying one thing, that not working, so it resets, and the compromise then comes after that. So it's all about the character motivations, the character relationship that you build, even though it's just one short scene repeated several times. The main idea of the play is that there are three main characters. There's Brian, Alice and Maisie, and they're all fairly old characters, probably in their 60s. There is a character, Lewis, who is probably about 20, in his mid-20s, but he doesn't feature so prominently. And it's about them waiting for Brian and Alice's daughter, Susie, to come home from Australia after she'd been there for a year. So, in waiting for her to come home, all these scenarios and scenes play out again and again. the interesting thing as well is that the escalation of the absurdness of each scene grows and grows. So in the beginning, it's fairly normal, it's fairly standard. You understand a little from the characters. I think it's about building the relationship and understanding of the character relationship, to really random things happening, like gunmen coming in, and there later on an angry emu appears, and there are children running in and out. So like, about the random sort of things that are added into it, but could have an influence in more of like a metaphorical sense, and in setting the time period. So I haven't read through the whole of it, but read through most of it, and in the ending, it's interesting the way that the play ends in mid-sentence, like in the beginning, when Brian comes in. It doesn't have a definite ending, and I think because maybe Churchill wanted the audience to feel like this scene is just going to keep going on forever, that there are endless possibilities, and maybe that's about her political message, that the things just keep going on and on. Maybe it's about the way that a family works, a family unit, also because she was so interested in promoting feminist ideas. Maybe it's about the cycle of how women and men get along, and how it'll never be the same, how there will always be conflicts like in a family, how there will never be equality. Or maybe about how we're trying to change that, but it's always continuous. I think the idea of it being continuous is there though. So when looking at what we could do with it, we're looking at the idea of repetition, making it clear, not forgetting some of the main messages, like the feminist message that Churchill would like to get across in most of her plays, and taking inspiration from a lot of Brecht's techniques in Churchill's ideas, because she would have probably written a lot of it with intentions of Brechtian style too.